Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to remove the pads and rotors in a Honda Odyssey. Not too hard, it's very similar to any other brake job. The Hondas have the rotors are screwed onto the hub, so that's always a challenge. And but other than that, it's pretty much the same. Tools you'll need. There's a 22mm socket to remove the wheels, a jack, probably a drill, and I'll get into that later when we're removing the rotors. 14mm socket, a 19mm socket and or wrench to get the calipers off, and that's pretty much it. C-clamp in order to press the piston from the caliper back in. Anti-seize, I use that quite regularly, and a little bit of oil for drilling, and maybe a manual impact that may or may not work for you. I'll show you a hammer, and I think that pretty much covers it, so we'll get right to it. Okay, got a wheel off. Now there's the first step is to remove the caliper here. There's a 19mm bolts on the back. I've used wrenches before in the past, but I found that these ones are on pretty tight, so may end up having to try to use a breaker bar, getting in back here. An impact would be another good choice if it doesn't look like the breaker bar. Coming down below down here, bust it loose, and then probably for the bottom one come in like this angle and try to bust it loose this way. It took quite a bit of trying on the other side, so it's going to be a little bit of a work. Just as a forenote, these are the screws I was talking about having to drill out, so I'm going to get to that right now. All right, just to give you an idea of how I ended up breaking it loose. So using a 19mm socket and this breaker bar, this is on the passenger side. You get it on back here at an angle pointing down, and then I pushed with my foot forward and pushed it that way, broke it loose. And then something similar on the bottom one from here. I was kind of at this angle and kind of was able to push down a bit, just enough to kind of break it loose and then work the angle. And then with a 19mm ratcheting wrench and get them loose. Now the whole caliper and bracket can come off. Now this car has 100,000 miles on it. The rotor is actually in pretty decent shape. There's not a lip. I always just suggest replacing them because I don't think they'll last another 100. They may, but it's not that expensive to get them replaced. It's like 30 bucks each. You know, maybe 20 bucks to get them resurfaced, or you could just keep going. So now, try to get this sucker out. I'm going to try it with the manual impact first. We'll see if I have any luck. So the way this manual impact works is you stick it in and you hammer it and try to twist it at the same time, and you hope that it starts loosening the screw. Let's try it. As I feared, no juice. So next step, 1/4 inch drill. Pretty much just have to drill in the center until the head comes off, and then a little bit past that. So what I'm going to do, you take a little oil, you run the drill bit here, and then you drill for a little bit, and you dip it in oil again. Now that's done, the way you can get this hub off, there's these holes right here that are threaded. If you find the right size bolt, which I have found, I think it's like a 1/8 by 1.5 or 1 1/4 thread size. You actually thread that on, and it'll pop this rotor right off. That's it. Clean that up and put the new rotor on, and then we'll put the caliper on. I popped one of the pads out because it's easier to get it fitted back on when one of the pads are missing. real quick. And then, so I'll put some anti-seize on these bolts, get this up. This is one of those like tough ones, getting these holes lined up, but you just kind of have to do it. There's no tricks that I'm aware of. These are lined up, getting it tightened down. No tricks here. This is where ratcheting wrenches, in my opinion, really stand out. All right, so just tight. You don't have to worry about trying to kill it. It doesn't have to be a million foot-pounds of torque here. I usually tap it with a rubber mallet a few times. When you add a little bit of lubricant on the threads, like I did the anti-seize, it's actually, you don't need to torque them as hard as if they were dry. So get these things on. That's good. Now, this is where the 14mm socket comes into play. I have to take off the bolts on the back here. I'll show you where those are, and then get the caliper portion off. 14mm socket here. So 14mm socket back here. I'm starting to loosen this one, and I notice that this is spinning here. So you have to get a wrench and hold that in place. It's a 19mm wrench. There you go, that was tight, tougher than I expected. So I guess I knocked the camera down when I loosened it, but broke that free. 14mm come out. You do the same on the bottom. May not need to use the wrench on the bottom. This is the first time I actually had to use the wrench to hold this in place. So it's hexed here at this. Got the other one loosened up. Pulled the bolts out here. And now I move the caliper up. This is where the C-clamp is going to come into play. Take the old pad, you stick it here, and then we'll grab that C-clamp. Wherever I put the C-clamp, it's going to go on like this. It's going to be hard to show you an angle, but there's a bolt on the back that I usually use. You can see I'm pushing the pistons back in. Now I'm going to check the master cylinder and see if it's being overfilled. Pistons are pretty much pressed all the way in. The master cylinder is overflowing a little bit. It's right at the lip. So I'm going to suction some off and the brake fluid out of the master cylinder, and then push them in a little bit longer, a little further. There's a couple tools. You might use like a bulb pump thing. You don't have to take out much, just a few ounces. Silly me, I didn't replace this, pull this other pad out. So pull this pad out, then these things should pull right out. New ones go back in. Now, front pad goes in like that. Pad that has this thing is on the back. That just slides in as well, kind of like the front one. That's it. Now, this goes back. Actually, one thing you want to do, what I do is I pull these out, clean off the old grease, and put some axle grease back on just so they don't get seized up. The axle grease, because it's a high temperature grease, so I just slather it on, slide it back in, boonk. Do it for both. I'll put some anti-seize on these bolts to get those things back in. Tighten these things down, you don't have to kill them. Just get them nice and tight. That's pretty much it. We'll clean the rotor with some brake cleaner, and that's it. Throw the tire back on, drop it down, take it for a test drive. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Make sure to check the fluid in the master cylinder before you go. If it's looking dark, you're probably going to want to change out your fluid at some point. That means flushing it out and just adding more brake fluid. Before you drive the car, pump the brake pedal a few times. The pads will have to grab the calipers again. They're going to be recessed. So if you start driving, you'll find that all of a sudden your brakes aren't going to work. So you pump it a few times, you feel them be soft, and then they'll kind of firm up again. Then start it. Test drive your car for a little bit before you give it to your spouse or your significant other, and should be good to go. If you found the video helpful, please give me a thumbs up. If you are into fixing cars, please subscribe. If you're into photography, check out some of my photography videos and subscribe. I do a lot of stuff from Milky Way. You'll see some links pop up here shortly, and I have a photography blog, Twitter account, Facebook page mostly for photography down below, but I also do a lot of other car stuff. So, all right, thank you very much and take care.